The internet is full of useless information about food. Pasta is no exception. This simple, humble ingredient is completely misunderstood. Even some of the best chefs in the world get details wrong from time to time. So in this video, I'm questioning everything we have ever been told about pasta so that you can make chef-level pasta at home. In this video, I'm going to be diving into a boiling pot of misinformation surrounding pasta. And I'm going to be separating fact from fiction when it comes to pasta cooking myths. But before we can even start cooking, it's important that we understand the anatomy and composition of pasta. Pasta is composed of water, flour, and sometimes eggs. But what happens when we put this pasta into boiling water? The starch granules absorb water and swell. This makes the pasta soft and edible. Then as the pasta cooks, the heat causes the starches to gelatinize, which helps thicken the cooking water and creates a sticky surface on the pasta. Then we have surface starch. The outer layer of the pasta releases some starch into the cooking water, creating a starch solution that can help sauce adhere better to the pasta. Now, pasta is something that has confounded home cooks for generations. So I'm going to be questioning 5 common pasta cooking tips that will have you questioning everything you knew about making perfect pasta. First up, the myth that you should be rinsing pasta after it comes out of the water to prevent sticking. Then, we'll tackle the idea that adding oil to the water is the key to non-sticky noodles. Next, we'll explore the belief that constantly stirring pasta is the secret to success. After that, we'll debunk the notion that larger bodies of water retain heat better, therefore you should use them. And finally, we'll scrutinize the idea that you need boiling water to cook pasta. So the first experiment is simple. All we're going to do is cook some pasta and then rinse it off with water to see if it sticks. So here's what happened. So when we wash the pasta after, we're getting rid of the starch. This starch acts as a type of glue, which makes the pasta stick together. However, it's impossible to get rid of all the starch. And when the pasta starts to cool down, the residual starch that's left on the pasta re-solidifies and it makes your pasta stick, making this one a myth. In this next experiment, we're going to analyze one of the claims that Gordon Ramsay makes in one of his videos. This comes directly from his YouTube channel from a video called How to Cook Perfect Pasta. In this video, he teaches that adding oil to pasta water prevents the pasta from sticking. So let's see if this is true. This is another easy experiment. All we did was add oil to the water when the pasta was cooking. When it came time to drain the water, the pasta did the exact same thing it did when we rinsed it off. It started to become sticky as soon as it cooled. This is because oil is less dense than water, which is why you see it float to the top. However, there is a benefit to putting oil in your water. So let's look at a side-by-side comparison of cooking pasta with oil and cooking it without oil in water. Even though it has minimal effect on preventing pasta from sticking, the oil that is sitting on top acts as a layer that reduces the amount of bubbles, meaning the water is less likely to boil over. Toss your pasta in oil after you're done cooking, they said. Well, let's give this a try. Here are 3 examples of pastas that have been tossed in sauce. The first example is pasta getting tossed with the oil to prevent sticking, then in the sauce. The second example is with simply tossing the pasta in sauce. And the third example is us rinsing off the pasta with water to remove some of the starch to prevent sticking. Looking at these 3 examples, it's clear to see which one adheres to the pasta better. And it's clearly the pasta that is neither tossed with oil or water. So where did this notion that we need to toss our pasta in oil after cooking come from? This procedure comes from restaurants. Restaurants are so busy that it's not a sustainable practice to cook pasta to order. Thus, pasta is created in batches so that they can just reheat it per order. Since pasta is covered in starch after it's cooked, it becomes sticky and hard to use. It's tossed in oil so that it can easily be portioned without sticking together, and the cooks can quickly use it to fulfill the order. To reheat the pasta, it's dropped back into water to remove the oil. Since the water is used multiple times throughout the shift, it's naturally starchy, which helps the sauce cling to the pasta. My advice is that if you're making pasta in advance, go ahead and toss it in oil. But the notion that we should be tossing it every time we make pasta is false. This next one we've heard time and time again. You need to consistently stir your pasta. So let's see what happens when we make pasta, stir it throughout the entire cooking process, and then compare it to the pastas that we made in the first 2 experiments. As you can see, there's really no difference. So should we be stirring our pasta? My recommendation is to just let it cook naturally with minimal stirring. In this video, I use penne, a very durable pasta. Pastas such as ratatouille and ravioli are very fragile, and when you stir pastas like this, you risk damaging the pasta. So at the beginning of this video, we went over the definition of pasta. Something that was mentioned is that heat causes the starches to gelatinize, which makes the pasta sticky. So initially, when you put the pasta in the water, strands start to cling together or stick to the bottom of the pot. This is why it's recommended to stir the pasta once at the beginning of the cooking process. This initial stirring is enough to separate the pasta and prevent sticking throughout the entire cooking process. So the trick is all about boiling water. Boiling water naturally causes convection currents. As water heats up, it rises to the surface and the cooler water moves down to replace it, creating a circulating movement. This natural movement helps keep the pasta in motion, reducing the likelihood of sticking even without consistent stirring. So when I cook pasta, what I want to do to achieve the best results is to stir as soon as I put the pasta in the water to prevent the initial sticking. Then I'm going to let the pasta cook naturally in the boiling water. The natural movement of the boiling water is going to prevent sticking, eliminating the need for you to consistently be stirring your pasta. By following this method, you not only prevent the pasta from sticking, but also preserve the texture and integrity of the pasta, creating the most ideal outcome for your pasta. So the notion that you need to consistently be stirring your pasta is false. Now, when cooking pasta, many of us have been told to use larger bodies of water. But what if I told you there's a better way? In this segment, we'll explore why using smaller amounts of water might be better for cooking pasta. So the first thing I want to touch up on is the use of energy. Whether you're using a small body of water or a large body of water, the amount of energy to bring the water back up to a boil once you've put in the pasta is the same. The key differences lie in the volume of water and its impact on the cooking process. When you add pasta to a pot of boiling water, the temperature drops because the pasta absorbs the heat. In a large pot, this temperature drop is smaller because the water returns to a boil more quickly. However, this isn't necessarily an advantage. It's the energy required to reheat the pasta that matters, not the volume of water itself. So keeping this in mind, let's consider the role of starch. Cooking pasta in a smaller amount of water results in a higher concentration of starch in the water. And if this video has taught you anything so far, it's that this starch is crucial because it helps coat the pasta, giving you a desirable texture and making it easier for sauces to stick. Essentially, when you're using a larger body of water, you're diluting the starch content in that water. And this starch content is extremely important for our final product. So in reality, a smaller pot maintains a higher starch concentration, which is preferable for achieving that perfect al dente texture. So in reality, when they tell you to have a large pot of water, that's actually false. And finally, you need to have boiling water to cook your pasta. Or do you? I put pasta in room temperature water. About 30 minutes later, the pasta came out completely soft. Does this disprove the theory that the pasta needs to be in boiling water, which is 212 degrees Fahrenheit, to cook? Not exactly, because the pasta wasn't ready to eat. First, pasta is typically made from semolina, which contains starch granules. When dry pasta is placed in water, these granules absorb the water and swell. Second, pasta contains proteins, mainly gluten. As the pasta soaks, the gluten networks hydrate and become more flexible, contributing to the softening of the pasta. And finally, water molecules penetrate the pasta through capillary action, ensuring even hydration. But soaking the water wasn't enough for the pasta to be ready to eat. And to fully cook the pasta, the water needs to reach a temperature of 180 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, you'll see starches start to gelatinize and proteins denature and coagulate, giving the pasta its perfect texture and flavor. So why is this important to know? In the last segment, we talked about using a smaller body of water because it holds the starch better. But the counter argument to that is that it lowers the water's temperature. But what this segment is proving is that lowering the temperature is okay because the pasta water will still be 180 degrees Fahrenheit, so your pasta will still be cooking until we get it back up to a boil. So this is actually a stronger argument for using a smaller body of water. While we usually cook pasta in boiling water at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, it will still cook properly as long as the water temperature remains above 180 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes the notion that the water has to be at 212 degrees a false statement. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to support the channel. If you're passionate about food science, be sure to check out my short videos on various food science topics while I work on bringing you more in-depth content.